So we have to understand the behavior from the person's perspective. We also know that, and lesson 10 is that behavioral assessment should evolve from a good, behavioral programming should evolve from a good assessment and result in the development of a hypothesis statement pathway. So let me just, this is a student that I got called in to see because he would throw scissors across the room and throw materials around the room. He had some communication challenges, but he could speak, but he wasn't able to communicate what was going on. He had tremendous anxiety and a lot of sensory issues. And as I watched him in the art class, when he ran out of materials, he didn't know how to ask that he needed materials. And so what he would do is he would get upset because he couldn't come to completion on the task. And so he would throw a pair of scissors or throw something across the room. What he got was a small release of anxiety. He usually was invited to leave the classroom, and he got some staff attention. Unfortunately, what happens is that too often we focus on how do we increase that consequence so he understands he can't do it. How do we make this more punishing so he understands he can't do it? But what I would suggest to you is this, is that your program needs to be in the area of setting events. Until we can teach our folks how to communicate, we can address the sensory issues, or whatever those setting events are, we will continue to have these behaviors. So what we need to do is focus on teaching alternative behaviors. And in truth, when you write IEP goals, they should not be about what behavior we will get rid of, but it should talk about what is the alternative that we're going to teach. Because if we cannot identify an alternative, and I'll tell you what, we're really good in meetings of saying, he hits, he throws, he pinches. You know, we're really good at that. And then when we ask the question, but what should he do instead? Then we have a difficult time. Okay? And in truth, our IEP should focus on teaching the alternative behaviors. We teach everything else. Why don't we teach kids how to behave? And those alternative behaviors should be as efficient and as effective as the problem behavior that we teach. And, you know, here's just a few, and I'm not going to go through all these, but probably the one that really challenges me the most is social skills. You know, and I think there is no curriculum that will simply teach social skills. Okay? Social skills is about the ability to make social judgments very quickly in social context. And if it was very simple, none of us would make mistakes. The other aspect of this is that there are different social rules for different ones of us. Whether you are thin or fat, rich or not, smart or not, based on your race, your creed, and color, based on whether you have a disability or not. There are different social rules for people if they have a disability. So a child without a disability, a cute little boy in the playground, is running after a cute little girl on the playground. And she's all excited. And he pushes at her and she's like, oh! Child with autism watches that and he goes and pushes on the little girl, and what happens to him? He gets in trouble. Okay? And that's really difficult. We also have to utilize evidence-based practices, and I am a great supporter of applied behavior analysis. I went back and became a BCBA, and part of it was that I became very concerned that there seemed to be some misunderstandings around applied behavior analysis. Applied behavior analysis is a tool that we should all be using, not simply discrete trial teaching, but applied behavior analysis includes things like task analysis, shaping, chaining, prompting, incidental teaching. All of these are things that we know are evidence-based practices that also include that are part of applied behavior analysis. So I'm just going to go through a few of these because I've talked about some of these, but I was one time told by a very well-known autism professional, who I shall not name, that people with autism don't know or care if you like them. I absolutely disagree. And I would also put this challenge out to any of you. If you are in this profession and you don't like students or like these kids, choose a different profession. Their life is too valuable. I think that I made, again, many mistakes, but I think one of the things that I really love working with students. To this day, I still get to work with students, and it's probably the thing that I love the most. I'm going to give you a story that is about an individual with Down syndrome, which, by the way, is part of that genetic makeup. How many of you have worked with individuals with Down syndrome? Part of that makeup is stubbornness. Would you say? Okay. I know we'd always talk about the physical disabilities. So I had a student who would fall on the floor. And he was about 15 years old, and he would fall on the floor. And it was hard to get him off. And when you'd see him walking down the hallway, there was always somebody behind him walking with him, holding his belt loop up. So he walked around like this all the time. He must have had a permanent wedgie from that. Okay? And he had no belt loops on the back of his pants. He was invited to join my class because his teacher didn't like him. Some of the things that I learned about him were that he was loved to work on the computer. He was very gentle with small children. He had a bunch of nieces and nephews, and he was so tender with kids. And the other thing that I learned about him was that he was a practical joker. His favorite trick is that when his parents had friends visiting, he would steal their car keys, and he would go sit in their car with all the doors locked. And when they came out to the car looking for the keys, he'd be sitting in the car holding the keys up. Okay? Now, don't tell me that he's severely disabled. Okay? So anyway, when I got him, I developed a program where he would come in the morning, and I'd have him do work for me on the computer. And then there was a time, he had expectations placed on him, but he would either get to go work with kids, or the other thing that I did for him is that I gave him a whoopee cushion. And so just so you know, I am responsible for whoopee cushion therapy, if that ever becomes the new autism treatment. Okay? And so we had a list of these are the people you could use the whoopee cushion with, these are the people you couldn't, because we had some people who didn't have a sense of humor. And so when he did certain things, I would give him a choice of going to work with the kids or having a whoopee cushion, and he would take the whoopee cushion sometime. And it wasn't like he was really subtle. He would go up to the person and he'd go, stand up, put the whoopee cushion underneath them, sit down, And then I would sometimes go up to him and do the same thing. Stand up! And I'd put the whoopee cushion underneath him. I'd push him down. And we became friends, I was always his educator, but we also developed a rapport. And the next year I had left, and I came back to the school, and he was sitting on the floor again. And I looked at him, and I said, what are you doing? And he looked at me, and he said, teacher's stupid, no whoopee cushion. And I think, I've learned from so many of these experiences that the rapport we establish with individuals allows us. Because you know what happens is that when you have a rapport with somebody, they trust you enough that they can learn from you. Being willing to learn requires that we trust people, okay? Whatever that means. And so I think that it's probably one of the most important things. We talk a lot about predictability and routines. And one of the things that I know about life is that things change. And so if your child does the same thing every day and has to do the same thing every day, you're setting them up for a behavioral problem. Okay? We have to make sure that we teach people how to have changes in the routines. We all have routines that we fall into, but I think that we have to be very careful not to make people dependent on those routines. Autism has become a business. And I think it has to be very difficult to know who to trust in this business, families. There are people who are taking advantage of your desperation and hope. Okay. And what I always tell folks in this, one of the things that makes me the angriest about that, what I'm thrilled about is that families have so many more options. What I worry about is that we have many people who are not in the business very ethically. And we make parents feel guilty for not trying everything. Parents make each other feel guilty. And the analogy, because I always look at how this relates to my own life, the analogy in my own life is this, is that about a year ago, I lost a cousin to cancer who was like a brother to me. And if in that moment one of you had come up to me and said, give me everything you have, everything you own, everything you will ever make in life, and I will give you this pill that will cure your cousin, I would have done it in a heartbeat. And what I see are parents who love their children so much, and we have to hold sacred that love, that hope, that desperation, and not take advantage of it.